Good day, Crime Talk aficionados. This is Crime Talk, and my name is Scott Reich. A quick preview of today's docket. First, a Clinton lawyer accused of lying to the FBI found not guilty by a D.C. jury. This Murdaugh case gets more and more interesting. I'll explain. A not guilty on the Tinder date gone bad. More dating malpractice examples. Don't go to England, Kevin Spacey. Some people do have a conscience. And then finally, our dumb criminal of the day. Let's talk about it. Good day, aficionados. You know the drill. Subscribe if you have not. Like the video if you do. Leave me a comment about what we discussed today and hit that little bell so you get notifications of when we go live or put up new content. And remember, if you can't watch us, you can listen to us anytime, not only this episode, but any episode over the last 4 years by simply going to your favorite podcasting app and search Crime Talk with Scott Reich. Listen to us anytime. All right. Let's give a quick reminder. We're going live 6 p.m. Mountain Time tonight. It'll be our live show, and then we'll go straight into our Patreon show as well. All right, today is Tuesday, May 31st, 2022. Let's go ahead and open the docket. First, a not guilty for lying to the FBI. A lawyer for the Hillary Clinton 2016 presidential campaign was acquitted this morning of lying to the FBI when he pushed information meant to cast suspicion on Donald Trump and Russia in the run-up to the 2016 presidential election. The trial focused on whether Mr. Sussman, a cybersecurity attorney and former federal prosecutor, concealed from the FBI that he was representing Clinton's campaign when he presented computer data that he said showed a possible secret back channel between Russia-based Alpha Bank and the Trump business organizations. Now, the FBI investigated, but quickly determined that there was no suspicious contact whatsoever. The Bureau's then general counsel and the government star witness, a guy by the name of James Baker, testified that he was 100% confident that Mr. Sussman had told him that he was not representing any client during the meeting. And prosecutors say he was actually acting on behalf of the Clinton campaign and another client, and that he hid that information from the government so as to make it seem more credible that he was just there as a concerned citizen and to get the FBI to investigate. Well, lawyers for Mr. Sussman deny that he lied, saying that it was impossible to know with certainty that he had told Mr. Baker, the general counsel to the FBI, since they were the only two participants in the meeting and neither one of them took notes. Now, Mr. Sussman's attorneys argued that if Mr. Sussman said he wasn't acting on the Clinton campaign's behalf, that was technically accurate since he didn't ask the FBI to take any particular action. And they said that even if he did make a false statement, it was ultimately irrelevant. It was ultimately irrelevant since the FBI was already investigating Russia and the Trump campaign and would have looked into the Alpha Bank data no matter the source. Now, during the 2-week trial, jurors heard from current and former FBI officials who described efforts to assess the data's legitimacy and former Clinton campaign aides, including the Clinton campaign manager, who stated that it was Hillary Clinton, who stated this under oath, that it was Hillary Clinton that authorized this release of this data, knowing that it was fake. The original Trump-Russia investigation, overseen for 2 years by former special counsel Robert Mueller, found multiple efforts by Russia to interfere on the Trump campaign's behalf, but did not establish that the two sides had worked together to sway the election. Now, after Mueller's work was done, then Attorney General William Barr named the new Justice Department prosecutor, then Connecticut U.S. Attorney John Durham, to examine whether anyone from the FBI or other agencies violated the law as the government opened its investigation into the Russian election interference investigation. Now, Durham has remained on the job during the Biden administration, and he has brought 3 cases so far, though the one against Sussman is the only one that have actually reached trial. A former FBI lawyer, Kevin Kleinsmith, was given probation after pleading guilty in 2020 to altering an email related to the surveillance of the ex-campaign aide for Trump and a Russian analyst who contributed to the dossier of Democratic fundraising research into ties between Russia and the Trump organization. A Russian analyst who contributed to the dossier of Democrat-funded research into ties between Russia and Trump also awaits trial on charges of lying to the FBI about the sources of his information. So what this case shows is that if you are alleged to have lied to the FBI, it only has to be material to their investigation. And items were presented at trial. In fact, the evidence that was presented more than likely had it been one of you or I that we had lied to the counsel in the fact that there was a text message sent to Mr. Baker via text message in order to get the meeting to pass the Alpha Bank hoax on to the FBI. It's also alleged that Mr. Sussman lied again during the meeting, stating he was not there on behalf of a client in order to get the FBI to open an investigation into the Trump organization's purported ties with Alpha Bank. He specifically said he was not appearing before the FBI for any particular client. However, his billing records, Mr. Sussman's, show that at the time he was in fact meeting with Baker on behalf of a client, the Clinton campaign. The evidence showed at trial that Mr. Sussman billed the Clinton campaign for the thumb drives passed to Baker during the meeting. How was the Clinton campaign billed? According to Sussman, a confidential project. One of the jurors spoke after the verdict was announced and held a little bit of a press conference and said that she was expressing her displeasure that the special counsel would prosecute a false statement case. There are bigger things that affect the nation than a possible lie to the FBI. Well, I agree, but it doesn't necessarily mean you throw it out because it's small potatoes, so to speak. But that goes to the whole rule of law thing, I guess. Anyway, doesn't look very good for Mr. Durham's investigation to go forward. Mr. Sussman will, I'm assuming, continue back to work for his clients in the future. Next on the docket, this Murdaugh case gets more interesting. So according to some court documents filed last week, a bank in South Carolina would often allow the disgraced attorney Alex Murdaugh to overdraft his account, sometimes in the six-figure range. I mean, your bank lets you do that, right? The Palmetto State Bank apparently would let Mr. Murdaugh keep his accounts in the negative for the past several years. Despite this, the bank allegedly gave Mr. Murdaugh large loans, which he was said to have not paid back on time. Authorities claim Mr. Murdaugh's banking behavior should have appeared on the anti-fraud reports, but that never occurred. The documents show that Palmetto State Bank gave Mr. Murdaugh a $750,000 line of credit, even though his account was in the negative amount, $162,000. Now, Mr. Murdaugh's relationship with Russell Laffitte, Palmetto State Bank's former CEO, has come under a little bit of scrutiny. Mr. Laffitte resigned in January before he was criminally charged with 21 counts of allegedly conspiring with the attorney to steal some $2 million. Mr. Murdaugh himself still remains in custody after being arrested back in October of 2021 for allegedly stealing $4.3 million from the family of his housekeeper, Gloria Satterfield, who died on his property back in 2018. Mr. Murdaugh was accused of stealing that $4.3 million from an insurance payout from the Satterfield family. I've said this before. The reason why I find this case so interesting is because there is no way that Mr. Murdaugh could have done this alone. Obviously, it appears as though the bank was involved or players of the bank were involved. The extent of how many people knew about it will probably be yet to be determined. But the insurance companies, you would think, would also have to be in on the fix, so to speak. And then the court system would also have to be potentially in on the fix as well, because anytime there's these types of settlements or probate estates are set up, reports and filings have to be made to the court under the pains and penalty of perjury. And if they're being rubber stamped because of the attorneys involved, that's a huge, huge problem. I think this is going to show that the South Carolina legal system is little more than a good old boys club. It is a good old criminal enterprise that may finally be coming to an end. We will see if any more people are going to be indicted or if people come forward to save themselves and tell exactly what was going on. And the interesting thing is if Mr. Murdaugh was getting all this money, where was it going? You can say that he had a drug abuse problem, which he went to treatment for, but the bottom line is there's no way he could have spent that much in drugs. There is something much deeper going on here, and hopefully it will be resolved soon. All right. We've told you before it's dating malpractice not to check people out on those dating apps. Let me give you an example. An ex-Virginia Tech football player was acquitted of beating his male Tinder date to death after claiming the hookup had lied about being a woman, then allegedly performed oral sex on him. Aizamemen Itut, who's 19, was found not guilty of a charge of second-degree murder in the 2021 death of a guy by the name of Jerry Smith. Now, Itut says that he visited the victim last year after meeting on Tinder. Itut believed he was meeting up for oral sex with a woman named Angie and told police that Smith was hiding his face during the intercourse. Smith also apparently paid him $50 at the end. Now, the athlete also said he stopped messaging Smith after the interaction because he wasn't sure Angie was telling him the whole truth about their identity. A month later, Smith reached out to him again and invited him over, telling him to bring some friends. Itut then went down to Smith's apartment to find if Mr. Smith was a female or male. Prosecutors told the jury that Itut, then 18, became enraged and fatally beat Smith when he discovered that Angie was in fact a man. The former linebacker reportedly groped Smith before allegedly beating him to death in what Itut said was self-defense. In his testimony that he gave last Thursday, Mr. Itut had testified that Smith reached for what he thought was a gun. Smith did not own a gun, but police reportedly did find a knife between the man's mattress and box spring. Itut said he punched Smith 5 times and kicked him to gain time to escape the apartment. As the football player was leaving, prosecutors say Itut heard bubbling and gurgling coming from Smith, but did not call the police. Prosecutors argued that Itut did not act in self-defense. After Itut punched Smith and Smith fell to the floor, they said that there was no way Smith could reach the knife under the mattress. Medical examiner Dr. Amy Tharp testified for the state, saying that Smith had been the victim of a brutal beating. Prosecutor Patrick Jensen also noted that on the night of the fatal beating, Itut may have been wearing flip-flops, but the shoes were attached to a strong person, an elite college athlete, compared to Smith, who weighed just 153 pounds. Well, the former Virginia Tech football player testified that he felt violated after Smith lied to him, and prosecutors said that Itut gave different versions of events to the jury and to the police. Now, the defense attorney, a guy by the name of Jimmy Turk, told the jurors that the Commonwealth's evidence was circumstantial, while the defense's evidence, which included the testimony of Itut, was direct. Turk also said that Mr. Smith controlled the entire environment and the entire episode. He added that Smith had demanded that it be in the dark and had hidden a knife under his mattress. Turk also argued that police didn't ask Itut essential questions about Smith's knife or Itut's fear while in the apartment, 2 questions whose answers could have shown whether Itut was afraid for his life and acted in self-defense. Well, guess what? The jury deliberated for only 3 hours and reached a verdict of not guilty to all counts. Immediately after the not guilty verdict was announced, Mr. Smith's family quickly left the courtroom. It just shows you, ladies and gentlemen, you don't know exactly who you are dealing with when you meet them on an app. You should go check them out. Let's take a quick recess before we continue on with the docket. Please go to crimetalksearch.com, sign up for a background subscription service. You'll be happy you did. If there's anyone out there you were ever curious about what was in their background, now is the time to do it. If you're going to get involved with somebody, now is the time to do it. When you go to crimetalksearch.com, you put in the name, literally millions of public records are searched and a report is generated. And it's going to give you a report. If they have multiple social media accounts, you're going to find it. If they have multiple phone numbers, multiple email addresses, it's going to be found. And more importantly, you're going to get information regarding criminal history. Hopefully the person you're searching has none whatsoever. But if it's there, it's going to be found. You're going to get everything you'd want to know, whether you're going into business or whether you're going into a personal relationship. You're going to be able to find out the information you want to know. So go to crimetalksearch.com, sign up today. You'll be happy you did. All right, another example of dating malpractice. 31-year-old Precious Brower met up with 29-year-old James Larson Jr. after connecting on Facebook. Larson picked the Missouri woman up for their date just a few weeks after being released from prison. You know this has got to be good. Mr. Brower said Larson Jr. took her to his father's house by a lake about 45 minutes away from Kansas City. Once there, things were going well until Mr. Larson allegedly pulled out a knife and began abusing her, according to Ms. Brower. He took a big Bowie knife and he kept hitting me with it. He cut my hair out, took my dentures away and my glasses, and he kept hitting me with random objects, according to Ms. Brower. She was able to get away from him while he was asleep. The Kansas City Star has reported that police ultimately arrested Mr. Larson and charged him with first-degree domestic assault, felony kidnapping, felony armed criminal action, and a felon in possession of a firearm. Now, Mr. Larson has denied the charges and claimed that he never laid a hand or kicked her in any way. His father, however, said that it appeared as if Mr. Larson was not himself and ended up badly hurting the victim. Not good when your dad is throwing you under the bus, and he had no explanation as to the dentures, so you know he must not be telling the truth. The father continued, "I thought he was a changed man. I guess he was only good for about a week. I don't know if he was blacked out or drunk. I don't know what kind of chemicals he was taking or injecting. I just know it was not him, and I just got sideways after that." Now, the police said that we kind of expect something would happen because the subject is a violent career criminal. Unfortunately, he let the police be right in this particular situation because, ladies and gentlemen, sometimes people they don't change, okay? Sometimes they don't just change. So despite Mr. Larson's criminal past, he was let out of jail on his own personal recognizance bond, obviously, which means he doesn't have to pay any money unless he doesn't show up for court. So the whole world has been turned on their head, and apparently right there in Kansas City as well. All right, next on the docket, Kevin Spacey. I know you probably have good attorneys. You can afford attorneys, but I'm telling you, don't go to England, okay? Now, Kevin Spacey released a statement to Good Morning America saying that he is going to voluntarily appear in the UK as soon as he can to arrange to defend himself against these new charges that we talked about last week. He says that he's confident he can prove he is innocent, but he admits he's disappointed the court moved forward with the charges. Lastly, he thanked the Crown Prosecution Service for reminding the public that he is allowed a fair trial. Spacey faces 4 criminal charges for alleged incident involving 3 different men between 2005 and 2013. On top of the sexual assault, he's also been charged with causing a person to engage in penetrative sexual activity without consent. All 4 charges have been authorized, and he can only be charged formally upon arrest in Wales or England. What does that mean, Kevin? Okay, I'm going to talk to you like we know each other. Kevin, don't go. Don't go, okay? You've probably been to Wales. You've been to England. Apparently, wasn't that good. Stay home. Why go and put your liberty at risk? Why go not being able to turn yourself back in? I'm just saying, you know better what happened. I get it. But there's always a chance when you go to trial that you can lose. It's better to look guilty than to be found guilty. Just a little free legal advice for you there, Mr. Spacey. I'm just telling you, don't go. Don't go. Now, this recent criminal case kind of adds to Mr. Spacey's legal issues because he was also sued back in 2020 by the Star Trek Discovery actor Anthony Rapp, who claims he sexually assaulted him at the age of 14. Spacey's been called out by over 20 accusers who have made similar allegations, but he's never been tried on criminal charges. Don't go, Mr. Spacey. Don't go. Next on the docket, somebody does have a conscience. Please meet Mr. Curtis Culver. He was sentenced to 35 years behind bars, and his sister, Shanna Culver, got 20 years behind bars because they helped Brian Hawkins kill Frank McAllister in May of 1993. A hiker found McAllister's skeletal remains in April of 1994 near Grace and Nora Lakes. The victim's car had been abandoned at a Costco, having a large amount of blood inside the vehicle. The case went unsolved for years, but the big break arrived not because of any new technology or other investigative tactics, but because one of the defendants simply stepped forward. Brian Hawkins confessed in January 2018 to the ABC affiliate KRCK before turning himself in to the authorities. Hawkins stated that God and Christ and these things that have happened over the course of 25 years have pushed me to do the right thing. He added, "I know the wrong can't be changed, but this is the closest I can come to doing the right thing." Hawkins said he and the Culver siblings lured out McAllister in Shingletown, California, under the pretense of selling him methamphetamine. But in truth, they wanted to rob him of a $4,500 insurance payment that he had received recently. According to the Shasta County District Attorney's Office, Shanna and Curtis Culver initially denied any involvement in the murder, but eventually Curtis admitted that he had a knife during the robbery and hit the victim over the head with a rock after the victim was stabbed. Shanna was just 17 when the killing took place. The case has since been transferred to the Superior Court. Shanna and Curtis Culver pled guilty to the charges including involuntary manslaughter and robbery in concert. McAllister's uncle spoke at the sentencing, saying how devastating the crime was for the family. Now, Mr. Hawkins pled guilty in November of 2019 to the murder in the first degree, robbery, and special allegations. He was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison. Just goes to show, apparently, eventually, somebody will get a conscience and a cold case can be solved. And next, our dumb criminal. Our note as to last week's winner, the unidentified man who tried to steal a gun from a concealed carry class at a gun store in Las Vegas. And then when the police arrived, pulled a screwdriver on a police officer, stabbing him. And the police officers and the staff at the gun store shot and killed the unidentified man. Today goes into the you can't make this stuff up category. Iberia Parish Sheriff's deputies were called to the Burrard Road in Louisville, Louisiana, regarding an illegal transport of a house. Deputies arrived to find an abandoned truck, trailer, and house blocking the 400 block of Burrard Road. The owner of the house, a guy by the name of Tony Dominique, was instructed and warned by deputies that he needed the proper permit to move the house that size. The instructions were apparently ignored, and Dominique attempted to move the house down the road, hitting many mailboxes, road signs, and trees during the process. Now, Dominique and his alleged accomplice, a guy by the name of Nico Comey, were booked into the Iberia Parish Jail, and bond was set at $125,000 each, neither of which have made that bond just yet. All right, let's go ahead and close the docket for this Tuesday, May 31st, 2022. Please join us tonight, 6 p.m. Mountain Time, right here on YouTube for our Tuesday night live show. Have a wonderful day. We'll talk to you soon.